What's up, everyone? It's Ruby here, bringing you guys another Percy Jackson video as episode 3 just dropped today. And I just want to say how refreshing it is to watch a show that clearly is in love and dedicated to the books. And I think that this is probably one of the better adaptations in the sense that you don't need it to be word for word exactly like it was in the books. And it isn't. It definitely is not word for word exactly like the books. There's several scenes that get altered. There's several moments that get changed. And I think that's overall for the better. Because here's the thing. The books were written quite a long time ago where there are different standards, different ways of life. And even though the books really do like a solid representation and telling of a story, it misses a lot of elements in the sense that it was, a very early on kids book. Well, not kids, more like teen, young teen book. And in this sense, the show has evolved that. It has bettered it, I feel like. Like, I don't think they're necessarily better than the books, but mainly because the books have a very special part and place in my heart. But I think that in terms of an adaptation, we get kind of exactly the tone of Percy Jackson and the moments that are very important to include. Like, no, not everything is included, and there are scenes that are changed. But I think it makes sense why they changed it. Because I feel like for a good adaptation, you don't necessarily need it to be exactly like the comics or exactly like the book. I don't think it has to be that. And I think a lot of people make that mistake. They think a good adaptation is something that is word for word exactly what you want it to be. But the thing is, with books, it is a very different medium from movies. And movies are a very different medium from video games. You never want them to be the same because they aren't the same. The storytelling for books allows you to have strong narratives, a lot of exposition, a lot of things explained. With shows, you can't really do that. Or at least it's very much frowned upon to have so much like telling you what this is and telling you what that is, and in a sense that the things that have changed in the series are things that probably would actually spoil the viewing experience, because there are moments in the books that every Percy Jackson fan knows that are very pivotal to know, but they do give away things that are not necessarily supposed to be known right now. I mean, you would never know that it was that, but for a show purpose, it's kind of like for shows, usually if something is shown, it's followed up later, and, it's there for a purpose. So if they included a certain scene that was there and seemed to have no purpose until later on, then it would be weird, because you'll be wondering what that scene was about. And I think for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I will explain in a moment for the book spoilers, because I will be doing book spoilers and talking about how it's different from the books. But right now we're trying to focus on the actual episode, which showcased a great dynamic between Grover Annabeth and Percy. We really see how Percy and Annabeth don't really get along, because they don't. But we also see the moments where they actually kind of connect. And I also think There is a benefit to approaching it this way because, well, for those of you who know the slow burn that happens, it's a very slow burn between the relationship that is between Percy and Annabeth. And I'm not saying that they have to, like, jump into a romance, because I don't expect that. They're kids, they need to grow up still. But I am saying that this presents an opportunity for more new Percabeth moments that occur before we get to the final episode, like the final season. And I think that would be a really good payoff, especially because we, as the reader, we understand that there is subtext there, and they might not know that, but there is. Like, you can have romantic moments that are not necessarily, like, kissing or like that. Like, it can just be something that evolves over time, and it'll be interesting how they handle certain moments in the books. So, with that being said, I don't know if I can really continue without spoiling the books. So, this is your spoiler warning. We will be talking book spoilers. Down in the comments, if you guys want to talk about spoilers, you can. Just please try to give a warning for those who might not be familiar with books. That way they don't get spoiled with their experience watching the show. That's all I say. I don't care about spoilers because I know everything that there is to know about spoilers, so I don't care, but just keep in mind of what others' experiences are. Thank you. So let's get into the book spoilers, because that is a very important thing to discuss. Now, the scenes that are in the show are not necessarily the scenes that are in the books. Well, not in necessarily the order that they're told, or necessarily the way that they're told. And I think that is a good thing. Because with the books, there's a lot of foreshadowing, and sort of random foreshadowing in a sense. Like, I know, I don't think we're gonna get the eye color inconsistency, like, with Thalia. Like, for some reason, Thalia's eyes change. For those of you who don't remember, when Percy first sees Thalia in a dream, her eyes are a different color than what she actually ends up having in the Titan's Curse. Which is kind of funny, because it does kind of show you that maybe Percy is an unreliable narrator. Maybe you could argue that he just gives her his eyes. But it is kind of weird that he would do that, because the only way he would know what Thalia looks like is between Annabeth and Grover's description of her, or even Luke's. And so if he's getting the eye color wrong, it would seem to suggest that they didn't tell him that detail or something, or I don't know. It'd be weird. It would be a weird thing to get wrong, and I don't think they're gonna do that. Because also the thing that I think the reason why this season's gonna change a lot from the books is because in the books early on, the Lightning Thief specifically, there was a lot of changes that was made throughout the series. And I don't necessarily think that Percabeth was in the final equation. I mean, I think that relationship kind of just evolved with the story, and I don't know exactly to the extent of what Rick Riordan was thinking of putting into the books, like how much of Percabeth was really planned. No, I know that sometimes when you write a story, you don't anticipate two characters getting together, but then they do, because you kind of see their development and they really work with each other. I also like that with the show, with the books, there are people that don't necessarily like Annabeth's portrayal in the books, the character portrayal, because in the books, Annabeth is a little bit colder. Not necessarily colder, but she is very guarded. She's very defensive, and in some sense, people think that she is a little bit of a toxic trait towards Percy, especially with her calling him a seaweed brain and everything. And I don't necessarily agree with that assessment, but I can see why they might change that. I have no idea what that was. I'm curious to see if or how they do implement the seaweed brain nickname. Like, I feel like it should happen at some point, but I can see it not going the way that it did, or even like the wise girl thing. Because for those who don't know, the wise girl crack came from Clarice, which is kind of funny because, like, it's basically that Percy hears Clarice call Annabeth wise girl, and then he uses it as a name of endearment, sort of as a nickname, which is kind of funny because it's like, of all the places it comes from Clarice, and I can see it not happening this season. And maybe happening the next season. It depends on if they really want Clarice to be the origin of that nickname. I feel like it's probably actually going to happen more naturally than it did in the books. I think also the same thing with Seaweed Brain. Like, I feel like it will come up, just not necessarily the way that it did in the books. And I think that's okay. I think that there are obvious changes that they made, and I do wonder how much of this is, like, because it's the Disney rating for a show, and they can't do some things that they might want to do. It's possible. I mean, to be fair, book publishing is very different from show publishing, and it is Disney producing this show at the end of the day. It doesn't mean that Rick Riordan was necessarily censored. It just means that maybe what was allowed and not allowed was a little bit different from what was in the books. Like, obviously there are some things that are going to happen. Like, it just is. It's just the natural way of order. And there are some things that might get changed. I don't mind the changes so far. I think that as long as they stay true to the characterization of the characters, that they stay on that level, and so far I think they have, that it's going to be okay. I think as long as Annabeth feels like Annabeth, and Percy feels like Percy, which they definitely do, I think it's going to be good. And I can see why Leah Jeffries was casted as Annabeth. You know, I wasn't in the audition room. I don't know how those auditions went. But she, to me, definitely feels very much like Annabeth. And I think that I think that it's okay for them to not have the characters look like how they're supposed to in the books. Because I think sometimes we get this thing where the character has to look exactly like we imagine them in order for them to be a good adaptation. And I don't think that's not necessarily true. Sometimes appearance does matter, I feel like. Like, I feel like where it does matter is mediums where there's illustration and then there's artwork that is attached to it. And you can see their character already. We've never really had official art from Percy Jackson. It was mainly just fan art and the one, like, illustrator that worked with Rick Riordan for the very early images of the characters. And I think that you can't really take those images and say, this is definitely what the character should look like, because they are caricatures at the end of the day. They're not necessarily what they are canonically looking like. And also, I think that with the books, even if it does have physical descriptions, you can still imagine the characters to look however you would want to look. And I think also trying to cast for both appearance and personality can sometimes be challenging, because sometimes you have someone that looks exactly like the character, exactly how they're supposed to look like, but then they don't act like them. They don't feel like them. They don't, like, I think there's a clear difference between how Logan Lerman approached Percy Jackson and how what Walker does. Like, I think there's a clear difference in the characters, as well as with Annabeth. Like, there's a clear difference between Leah Jeffries and Alexandra Daddario, and it's not even close. They're not even close to the interpretations, and it's very telling because now you finally get what they're supposed to be like. And I definitely loved, what is her name? Medusa. I know her. Jessica Park Kennedy, I think? Something like that. I loved her portrayal of Medusa. It's very much more subtle. No offense to Uma Thurman, but that wasn't really Medusa, and this subtle approach was definitely much better in general. And I really appreciated that. I am just glad that we have a solid representation of the books. And you should still read the books. The books are amazing. Okay? The books are amazing. They are timeless, and you should definitely read them. But if you don't want to read them, this is a really good alternative to doing so. It's a quality adaptation that stays true to the books, and I think we're all in for a ride to see how this all ends up with The Last Olympian. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what changes are made, how they end up developing the characters, and how the characters age as well. I think it'd be very interesting to see them grow up and to see them become 16-year-olds and see how much they've grown. And hopefully they will have grown. I mean, it's a long series, so they should. And maybe afterwards we can get Heroes of Olympus. It would be very interesting to see if we do how they handle Heroes of Olympus. So, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and see you guys. It's been a blast.